The crystal chandelier above table 7 cast fractured rainbows across the white linen, each prism of light trembling with the bass notes from the jazz quartet in the corner. Elena Vasquez moved through the dining room of the sterling oak like water finding its path. Smooth, deliberate, invisible to those who didn't care to see. Her black uniform was pressed to knife-edge perfection. Her dark hair pulled back in a bun so tight it gave her a headache by hour 3 of every shift. But she'd learned long ago that pain was just another language, and she spoke it fluently. Preparing and narrating this type of story takes a lot of time and effort. If you like the story, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. If you want to watch every story of our channel, turn on the bell icon. Preparing and narrating this type of story takes a lot of time and effort. If you like the story, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. If you want to watch every story of our channel, turn on the bell icon. The restaurant occupied the ground floor of the Meridian Tower, 68 stories of steel and glass that pierced the Seattle skyline like an accusation. Up there, in those clouds, people made decisions that moved markets. Down here, Elena brought them $30 appetizers and pretended their jokes were funny. "Excuse me, miss." The voice came from table 7, sharp as a knife wrapped in silk. "This water has ice in it. I specifically requested no ice." Elena turned, her smile already in place. The smile that cost nothing and meant nothing. The man at the head of the table was perhaps 45, with silver threading through his dark hair in a way that probably cost more than her monthly rent to maintain. His suit was charcoal gray, custom-fitted, the kind that whispered wealth rather than shouting it. Marcus Thornwell. She'd seen his face on the business section of newspapers left behind by other diners. CEO of Thornwell Industries, a tech conglomerate that had just announced plans to expand into Asian markets. "My apologies, Mr. Thornwell. I'll bring you a fresh glass immediately." She reached for the offending water, but his hand shot out, stopping just short of touching hers. "That's not the point. The point is attention to detail. If you can't get something as simple as water correct, how can I trust this establishment with the more complex aspects of our evening?" Around him sat 4 other men in similarly expensive suits and one woman whose pearl necklace probably cost more than Elena's car, if Elena had owned a car. They watched the exchange with the detached interest of people accustomed to watching service staff get dressed down. Background entertainment. "You're absolutely right, sir. It won't happen again." Elena's voice remained steady, professional, empty of everything she actually felt. She'd perfected this voice over 3 years of working at the Sterling Oak, letting insults roll off her like rain off marble. "See that it doesn't." Marcus leaned back in his chair, dismissing her with a gesture. Then, to his companions, in a voice clearly meant to carry, "You see what I mean about declining standards? Can't even find competent help anymore. They take these positions when they have no real ambition, no drive. Content to be invisible." Elena felt something in her chest tighten, but her face remained serene. She collected the glass and turned toward the kitchen, her movements still fluid, still professional. Behind her, she heard one of the other diners chuckle, a sound like gravel in a disposal. The kitchen was a controlled storm of heat and noise. Steam rose from industrial pots while line cooks moved in practiced choreography, calling out orders in abbreviated code. Elena dumped the ice water and refilled the glass from the filtered pitcher they kept for exactly these requests, her hands steady despite the tremor running through her spine. "Let me guess," came a voice beside her. Miguel Rodriguez, the sous chef, was plating a salmon with the precision of a surgeon. "Table 7 giving you grief? Mr. Marcus Thornwell doesn't approve of ice in his water or ambition in his waitstaff." Miguel snorted. "That guy? He tips like it physically hurts him. Last month, he left Jessica 4% on a $500 check. Said the soup was too hot." He glanced at her, his dark eyes knowing. "You okay?" "I'm fine. You're always fine, Elena. That's what worries me." She managed a small, genuine smile for him. Miguel, who'd grown up 3 blocks from where she had, who understood that fine was sometimes the biggest lie you could tell. 5 more hours, then I'm out of here. I can be fine for 5 more hours. When she returned to table 7 with the corrected water, Marcus was deep in conversation with a thin man whose nervous energy seemed to vibrate the air around him. Confirmed for tomorrow night, the man was saying, consulting a tablet that glowed blue in the dim lighting. Mr. Zhang Wei and his delegation will arrive at 7. He's bringing his daughter, Mei Zhang, who handles their international acquisitions. And we're absolutely certain about the venue? Marcus cut him off, his tone suggesting the man's certainty meant nothing. The Imperial Lotus Room has the right atmosphere? Nothing can go wrong with this deal, Patterson. $300 million rides on Zhang Wei signing with us instead of Hartwell Tech. Patterson, the nervous man, nodded so hard his glasses slipped down his nose. Yes, sir. The Imperial Lotus specializes in authentic Beijing cuisine. Their staff even speaks Mandarin. Everything's been arranged to make Mr. Zhang feel welcomed. Understood. Elena placed the fresh water glass beside Marcus's hand, her movements whisper quiet. But as she turned to leave, Marcus's voice stopped her again. Wait, you there? What's your name? She turned back, schooling her expression into pleasant neutrality. Elena, sir. Elena. Tomorrow night, Table 7 will be reserved for the most important business dinner this company has ever hosted. Chinese investors. Very traditional, very particular about respect and protocol. His eyes traveled over her dismissively, cataloging and finding wanting. I assume someone with more refinement will be serving us? The words hung in the air like smoke. Around the table, the conversation had stopped. The woman with the pearls raised her eyebrows, a small smile playing at her lips. Patterson studied his tablet with sudden intensity. I'm not sure of tomorrow's scheduling, sir, Elena said evenly. But I'm confident whoever serves you will provide excellent service. That's not an answer. Marcus folded his hands on the table, the gesture of a man about to deliver a lecture he's given many times before. You see, in business, we don't deal in confident suppositions. We deal in certainties. When I'm negotiating with a man who controls a $50 billion investment portfolio, I need to know that every detail has been considered, every variable controlled. The ambience, the food, the service. His pause was deliberate, cruel. The presentation. You understand what I'm saying, don't you? Elena understood perfectly. She understood that Marcus Thornwell saw her as a prop in his carefully staged production, and he'd decided she wasn't the right aesthetic. Too brown, perhaps. Too common. Too real. I understand you want everything to be perfect, Mr. Thornwell. I'll make sure the management is aware of your concerns. Do that. He waved her away again, already turning back to Patterson. Now, about the gift we discussed. Has the jade sculpture been authenticated? Elena moved away from table 7, carrying their dismissed words like stones in her pockets. She had 4 other tables to attend to, orders to take, smiles to maintain. The sterling oak demanded perfection from its service staff. Perfect posture, perfect politeness, perfect invisibility until needed. She could be perfect for 5 more hours. She'd been perfect through harder things than Marcus Thornwell's casual cruelty. At table 12, an elderly couple celebrated their 50th anniversary. Elena brought them complimentary champagne and listened to the wife explain how they'd met at a library, both reaching for the same book on Chinese poetry. The husband's eyes crinkled with joy as he recited a line from Li Bai. We are both unhappy, to the sky's end. We meet. We understand. What does acquaintance matter? Elena felt something shift in her chest, like a door she'd kept locked starting to open. That's beautiful, she said, and meant it. Do you read poetry, dear? The wife asked. Not as much as I'd like to. My grandmother used to recite Tang Dynasty poems to me when I was young. She said they helped her remember home. The couple beamed at her, and for a moment, Elena wasn't invisible. She was seen, truly seen, by 2 people who knew what it meant to be understood across the barriers of language and time and loss. The rest of her shift passed in the usual rhythm. Orders delivered, glasses refilled, complaints smoothed over with practiced ease. But her mind kept circling back to table 7, to Marcus Thornwell's dismissive eyes and the enormous deal he was so desperate to close. $300 million. She couldn't even imagine that much money. Her student loans from her incomplete degree at the University of Washington totaled $63,000. A mountain she'd been chipping away at for 5 years, working double shifts and eating ramen, living in a studio apartment in Beacon Hill where the walls were so thin she could hear her neighbors' conversations in Korean and imagine she understood them. When her shift finally ended at 11 p.m., Elena changed out of her uniform in the cramped staff bathroom and emerged in jeans and a sweater that had seen better years. The night air hit her face like a benediction as she stepped out the employee entrance into the alley behind the Meridian Tower. Above, the building's lit windows stretched toward the clouds, each one a small world of ambition and achievement she would never access. Her phone buzzed. A text from her younger brother. "Daniel, can you cover my textbooks this semester?" Financial aid fell through. Elena closed her eyes and leaned against the brick wall. Daniel was at UW, studying computer science, maintaining a 3.8 GPA while working part-time at a campus bookstore. He was everything she should have been, focused, determined, on track. She dropped out after 2 years to help support their mother when she got sick. That had been 5 years ago. The plan had been to go back to finish her degree in international relations and her minor in Mandarin Chinese. The plan had been a lot of things. She typed back, "How much do you need?" The answer came quickly, $400. For $100. 2 shifts worth of tips if she was lucky. She had $847 in her checking account and rent was due in a week. But Daniel needed those books. "I'll send it tomorrow," she wrote. The walk to the bus stop took 15 minutes. At this hour, the streets of downtown Seattle were a study in contrasts. Gleaming towers housing companies that reshaped the world, and below them, the expected detritus of humanity. The houseless man wrapped in blankets near the fountain, the young woman crying into her phone outside a closed Starbucks, the delivery drivers racing to make their last drops before midnight. Elena waited at the bus shelter, checking the arrival time on her phone. 18 minutes. She was so tired her bones ached. Not just from tonight, but from all the nights stretching back years, from the weight of smiling when she wanted to scream, from making herself small so that people like Marcus Thornwell could feel large. A memory surfaced, sharp and clear. She was 8 years old, sitting in her grandmother's kitchen in the small apartment they'd moved to after immigrating from Mexico City. Her abuela was teaching her Mandarin, a language she'd learned decades ago when she worked as a translator at the Mexican embassy in Beijing. "Language is a bridge, Mija," her grandmother had said, helping Elena form the tones that felt so foreign in her mouth. "Every word you learn is a door you can open. Don't let anyone tell you that you belong in only one room." Elena had loved those lessons, had thrown herself into learning Mandarin with the same passion she'd later brought to her university studies. She'd even spent a summer in Beijing during her sophomore year, before everything fell apart. She'd walked along the Great Wall and navigated the subway system and debated philosophy with her host family's daughter, feeling like she'd finally found a piece of herself that fit. Then her mother's diagnosis had come, and Elena had boarded a plane back to Seattle, leaving that version of herself behind like luggage you couldn't carry. The bus arrived, mostly empty at this hour. Elena found a seat near the window and watched the city slide past. The familiar route from downtown to Beacon Hill, from the world of the Sterling Oak to her own neighborhood with its corner stores and hand-painted signs in 6 different languages. Home. Her apartment building was a 3-story walk-up with peeling paint and a front door that stuck. Elena climbed to the 2nd floor, her legs protesting after hours of standing. The hallway smelled like cooking spices and old carpet. Inside her apartment, the silence was absolute. She dropped her bag by the door and stood in the dark for a moment, letting the day drain away. Her studio was tiny. 1 room serving as bedroom, living room, and office, with a kitchenette tucked into a corner and a bathroom barely big enough to turn around in. But it was hers. The walls were lined with bookshelves she'd assembled herself, packed with volumes in English, Spanish, and Chinese. Her grandmother's poetry collection held a place of honor on the top shelf, next to the only photograph Elena had of her. Abuela at 60, standing in front of the Forbidden City, her smile proud and defiant. Elena heated up leftover rice and vegetables in the microwave and ate, standing at her tiny counter, scrolling through news on her phone. An article caught her eye. Thornwell Industries eyes major expansion into Asian markets. CEO Marcus Thornwell bets big on Chinese partnership. She skimmed the article, learning details she hadn't known. Thornwell Industries specialized in AI-driven logistics software, the kind of infrastructure that moved products around the world. They were competing with several other firms for an exclusive contract with Zhang Wei's conglomerate, which controlled shipping routes, warehouses, and distribution networks across Southeast Asia. The winner would essentially become the technological backbone of one of the world's fastest-growing markets. The loser would watch $300 million and years of potential growth vanish. Marcus had staked everything on this deal. The article mentioned his reputation for aggressive negotiations and absolute control over every detail of his business operations. Thornwell leaves nothing to chance. A competitor was quoted as saying, "He scripts everything, controls every variable. It's made him very successful and very isolated." Elena set down her phone and stared at the wall. She thought about Marcus's words at the restaurant, the casual cruelty of dismissing her as lacking refinement, ambition, worth. She thought about his carefully planned dinner tomorrow night, his desperation to impress Zhang Wei, his assumption that he could control every variable. And she thought about something her grandmother used to say, "The universe has a sense of humor, Mija. Just when you think you have everything figured out, it reminds you how small your plans really are." Elena smiled into the darkness of her apartment. Then she pulled out her laptop and began to research everything she could find about Zhang Wei, his business philosophy, his cultural values, and the art of high-stakes negotiation in Chinese business culture. She had no plan, no real reason to care what happened to Marcus Thornwell's precious deal. But she had information, and information, her grandmother had taught her, was just another kind of bridge, waiting to see who would dare to cross it. Elena's alarm screamed into the 6 a.m. darkness, dragging her from dreams of jade sculptures and tea ceremonies she'd never attended. She'd stayed up until 2 in the morning reading about Zhang Wei, his background growing up in rural Anhui province before building a shipping empire, his reputation for valuing personal character over flashy presentations, his famous quote, "I do business with people whose hands I would shake in any circumstance, not just when money changes between us." She showered in her bathroom that never quite got warm enough, dressed in her uniform, and caught the 7:15 bus downtown. The morning shift at the Sterling Oak was quieter than dinner service. Mostly business breakfasts, tourists eating overpriced eggs Benedict, lawyers fueling up before court appearances. Elena moved through her tables with the same practiced efficiency, but her mind kept drifting to the evening ahead. "You're distracted today?" Miguel observed during her break, when she sat in the back hallway eating a bagel she'd brought from home. "Everything okay?" "Just tired." "Liar." He sat down beside her, the smell of sautéed garlic clinging to his chef's whites. "This about that pendejo from last night?" "Thornwell." Elena hesitated, then nodded. "He's got this huge dinner tonight. Chinese investors. $300 million deal on the line. And you care because?" "I don't. Not about him, anyway." She picked at her bagel. "But I've been thinking about what he said. About me being invisible, lacking ambition. And I keep wondering, what if he's right? What if I've gotten so good at being small that I've forgotten how to be anything else?" Miguel was quiet for a moment, his expression thoughtful. "You remember when I started here? 4 years ago, fresh out of culinary school, thinking I was going to revolutionize fine dining. You wanted to put mole on everything." "I wanted to put mole on everything," he agreed, smiling. "And Chef Laurent shut me down hard. Said this wasn't a place for ethnic experimentation. Said I needed to learn to cook their food their way if I wanted to succeed." "That's awful." "It was. And you know what I did? I learned their techniques, perfected their sauces, became indispensable. And now, 3 years later, we've got a mole dish on the menu, and it's one of our most popular items. Sometimes being small isn't about lacking ambition, Elena. Sometimes it's about choosing your moment." She looked at him, this friend who'd understood her without her having to explain. "What if my moment is tonight? Then I hope you're ready for it, because once you stop being invisible, you can't go back." The afternoon shift crawled by with agonizing slowness. Elena served, smiled, collected tips, all while her mind spun scenarios for the evening. At 3 o'clock, she was in the staff room when Gerald, the restaurant manager, appeared. Gerald was a thin man of 50 with nervous energy and a talent for appearing busy while accomplishing nothing. "Elena, a word?" He gestured to his tiny office, barely more than a closet with a desk and a filing cabinet that never quite closed properly. She followed, her heart rate picking up. "Is something wrong?" "Not wrong exactly." Gerald shifted papers on his desk, not meeting her eyes. "Mr. Thornwell's party tonight, the Chinese delegation dinner. It's a very important event for the restaurant." "I understand." "Yes, well, Mr. Thornwell has specifically requested, that Jessica handle his table this evening. He feels she has more experience with high-level international clients." There it was, the confirmation of what Elena had already known. She kept her voice level. "Jessica's been here 6 months less than I have." "Yes, but she did that semester in Paris, and she's worked at Michelin-starred establishments." Gerald finally looked at her, his expression apologetic but firm. "Look, Elena, you're excellent at your job, reliable, professional. But this is about optics. Mr. Thornwell is a major client, and if he feels more comfortable with Jessica serving his table, we need to accommodate that. Because Jessica looks like what he thinks international sophistication should look like." Gerald's silence was answer enough. Elena felt something cold settle in her stomach. Not surprise, exactly. More like the confirmation of a truth she'd always known but had learned not to speak aloud. In places like the Sterling Oak, there were invisible lines that determined who served the VIP tables, whose suggestions were taken seriously, who got promoted to head server. And Elena, despite her 3 years of perfect service, her spotless record, her fluent Mandarin and Spanish, and her degree work in international relations, remained on the wrong side of those lines. "I'll work my regular section tonight," she said quietly. "I appreciate your understanding." Gerald's relief was palpable. "You're a team player, Elena. That matters." She left his office with those words echoing in her head. Team player, code for someone who accepted injustice without complaint, who absorbed insults and kept smiling. She'd been a team player her entire adult life. Where had it gotten her? Back in the dining room, the dinner prep was underway. The Sterling Oak transformed in the hours before evening service. Candles lit, crystal polished to blinding brightness, the scent of fresh flowers overwhelming. Elena checked her section. Tables 8 through 15, all standard reservations. Nearby, table 7 was being dressed with special attention. The finest linens, a centerpiece of orchids that probably cost more than Elena's weekly paycheck, place settings of actual silver rather than the stainless steel they used for regular diners. Jessica arrived for her shift at 5, blonde and bright and cheerful in a way that had never been expected of Elena. Jessica, whose father was a partner at a law firm, who worked at the Sterling Oak for the experience rather than the desperate need for rent money. Not her fault, Elena reminded herself. Jessica had been nothing but kind to her. The system wasn't Jessica's fault, but it was still a system and Elena was still stuck in it. "Big night," Jessica said, checking her reflection in one of the ornate mirrors that lined the walls. "I'm so nervous I could throw up." Mr. Thornwell made Gerald go over the protocol 3 times. Apparently, there's a whole thing about how to present the menu to Chinese guests, when to pour tea, even how to stand. "You'll do great," Elena said, and meant it. "I just hope I don't accidentally insult anyone. All this cultural sensitivity stuff. It's like walking through a minefield." Jessica glanced at her, curious. "You speak Chinese, right?" "Mandarin?" "Yes." "God, I wish I had that skill. Would make tonight so much easier. But I guess Mr. Thornwell wants someone who looks the part more than someone who speaks the language." Jessica paused, seeming to realize what she'd said. "That came out wrong. I didn't mean. I know what you meant. It's okay." But it wasn't okay, and they both knew it. The evening service began at 6. Elena's section filled quickly with the usual Friday night crowd. Anniversary dinners, business meetings, groups of friends celebrating promotions. She moved through them with automatic precision, her mind only half present. The other half was focused on table 7, watching as Gerald personally oversaw every detail of the setup. At 6:45, Marcus Thornwell arrived. He wore a different suit tonight, midnight blue, clearly expensive, and his hair was freshly cut. With him came Patterson, the nervous assistant, and 2 other men Elena recognized from last night. They settled at table 7, Marcus surveying the room like a general reviewing his troops. Jessica approached with water glasses and menus, her smile bright and professional. Elena couldn't hear the conversation, but she saw Marcus nod approvingly, saw him make a comment that caused Jessica to laugh. A sound like wind chimes, practiced and pleasant. At 7:15, there was a stir near the entrance. Gerald appeared, nearly vibrating with nervous energy, and Elena turned to see the new arrivals. Zhang Wei was smaller than she'd expected from his photographs, perhaps 5'6", wearing a dark suit that spoke of wealth but not ostentation. His face was kind, creased with laugh lines, though his eyes were sharp with the intelligence that had built an empire. Beside him walked a woman in her early 30s, elegant in a burgundy dress, her hair pulled back in a simple bun. This would be Mei Zhang, his daughter and business partner. And beside Mei walked an elderly woman in traditional Chinese dress, a qipao of deep green silk embroidered with golden chrysanthemums. Her hair was white, swept up in an elaborate style that spoke of a different era, and she walked with a cane topped with jade. Her eyes, Elena noticed immediately, missed nothing. They swept the restaurant with the assessment of someone who had learned long ago to judge character in the space of a glance. Gerald rushed forward, greeting them with practiced deference. Marcus rose from table 7, his charm deployed like a weapon, hand extended. "Mr. Zhang, welcome, welcome. We're honored to host you this evening." Zhang Wei's handshake was brief, businesslike. "Thank you for invitation." His English was serviceable but accented heavily. "This is my daughter, Mei, and my mother, Chun Bao." "A pleasure," Marcus said smoothly, though Elena saw the flicker of surprise that crossed his face. He hadn't expected the grandmother. Already, his perfectly planned evening had its first variable. They settled at table 7. Jessica approached with practiced grace, presenting menus with a slight bow Elena recognized from the training Gerald had mentioned. Smart, showing respect through body language even without words. Jessica began her practice speech. "Good evening. My name is Jessica, and I'll be taking care of you tonight. We're honored to have you dining with us. Our chef has prepared several special dishes that showcase." "Excuse me." The grandmother's voice cut through Jessica's spiel like a knife through silk. She spoke in Mandarin, her tone not rude but firm with authority. "Do you speak Chinese, young lady?" Jessica froze, her smile fixed in place. "I'm sorry, I don't understand." Chun Bao switched to heavily accented English. "You speak Chinese? Mandarin?" "Oh, no ma'am, I don't. But we have several staff members who—" "Then perhaps someone who speaks Chinese should serve us." The grandmother's English was better than her son's, precise if formal. "If you want to honor Chinese guests, first honor is to speak with them in their language, yes?" Marcus's expression flickered, irritation quickly masked. "Mrs. Chun, I assure you, Jessica is our finest server. She's been thoroughly briefed on Chinese dining customs and—" "Customs?" The grandmother's eyebrow raised elegantly. "You brief someone on my culture like teaching dog to sit?" She looked at her son and spoke rapid Mandarin. Elena was too far away to hear clearly, but she caught enough. "Typical American arrogance. Think throwing money at everything solves. Disrespectful." Zhang Wei responded in Mandarin, his tone placating, and Elena heard, "Important business? Be patient." But Mei Zhang spoke up, her voice carrying even though she kept her tone respectful toward her grandmother. "Nai is right. If Mr. Thornwell truly wanted to honor us, he would have ensured someone could speak with us properly. This feels like performance, not respect." Gerald had appeared at Elena's elbow, his face pale. "Do you understand what they're saying?" he whispered. "Most of it," Elena whispered back. "And they're not happy." The grandmother feels disrespected that no one speaks Mandarin. Shit. Gerald looked around desperately. Do we have any staff who? I speak Mandarin. Gerald turned to her, surprise and calculation warring on his face. You do. Fluently. I minored in it at UW, and I spent a summer in Beijing. My grandmother was a translator. At table 7, the situation was deteriorating. Marcus was attempting damage control. His voice smooth, but Elena could see the tension in his shoulders. Mrs. Chan. We've arranged everything according to traditional. You arranged nothing. The grandmother's voice rose slightly, and several nearby tables were now watching with interest. You make show. Big American CEO thinks money buys respect. Yes? Bring me food I recognize. Hire pretty blonde girl who bows but cannot say hello in my language, and I should be impressed. May touched her grandmother's arm gently, speaking soft Mandarin, but Chan Bao shook her head. She rose from her seat, leaning on her cane. Zhang Wei, we should leave. This is not place for us. Mrs. Chan, please. Marcus stood as well, his carefully planned evening crumbling before his eyes. Patterson looked like he might faint. Jessica backed away from the table, clearly out of her depth. Gerald made a decision. Elena, go. What? Go over there. Speak to them. Fix this. But I'm not. You're the only one who can. Go. Elena felt her heart hammering against her ribs. This wasn't her moment. This wasn't her business. She should stay invisible, stay safe. Let the disaster unfold without her fingerprints on it. Then she thought of her grandmother's voice. Every word you learn is a door you can open. She walked toward table 7, her legs moving before her brain could catch up with all the reasons this was a terrible idea. As she approached, Marcus turned to her, irritation flashing across his face. This isn't your section. We don't need. Elena ignored him entirely. She moved past him to where Chan Bao stood, preparing to leave, and spoke in Mandarin. Not the textbook Mandarin of classrooms, but the flowing, respectful dialect she'd learned from her grandmother. Grandmother Chan, please forgive this poor reception. Your presence honors us far more than we've honored you. It would pain my heart to see you leave without the respect you deserve. The silence that fell over table 7 was absolute. Chan Bao turned slowly, her sharp eyes fixing on Elena with sudden, complete attention. When she spoke, it was in Mandarin. Testing. You speak my language. Yes, grandmother. My own grandmother taught me. She was a translator in Beijing many years ago and always said that language is a bridge between hearts. I hope you'll forgive us for not offering you that bridge sooner. A smile ghosted across Chun Bao's face. Not large, but genuine. Your grandmother was wise. And you? What is your name? Elena Vasquez, grandmother. Mexican name. Chinese words. Interesting combination. Chun Bao settled back into her seat, her decision to leave apparently reconsidered. Tell me, Elena Vasquez, why does this restaurant put a girl who cannot speak Chinese to serve Chinese guests? Elena glanced at Marcus, whose face had gone through several shades of pale. I cannot speak for the restaurant's decisions, grandmother. I can only say that I'm available now, and I would be deeply honored if you would permit me to serve your table this evening. Zhang Wei leaned forward, speaking in Mandarin. Your accent is very good. Where did you study? Beijing Language and Culture University, sir. Only for one summer, but it was the most important summer of my life. Mei Zhang smiled for the first time. In Mandarin, she said, I went to BLCU for 3 years. Who was your instructor? Professor Wang Hui. She specialized in Tang Dynasty poetry and business negotiation language. She said the two weren't as different as people thought. Both required understanding what wasn't said as much as what was. Wang Hui. Mei's face lit up. She taught my classical literature course. She used to say, poetry is negotiation with the universe. Elena finished, and Mei laughed with delight. Marcus finally found his voice. What's happening? What are they saying? Elena turned to him, switching smoothly to English. Mr. Thornwell, Mrs. Chan and her family have graciously agreed to stay for dinner. If you'd like, I can serve their table and provide translation as needed. Translation? Why would we need? Marcus stopped, looking at Patterson with dawning horror. You told me the Imperial Lotus Room's staff spoke Mandarin. They do, sir, Patterson said weakly. The chef and the owner, but not the servers. We don't need. Marcus stopped again, clearly calculating. His perfect plan had gone sideways, but Elena had somehow pulled it back from complete disaster. Pride warred with pragmatism on his face. Pragmatism won. Fine. Yes. Elena, you'll serve this table. Jessica, you can help with. Jessica should take my section, Elena said firmly. If I'm going to provide proper service to your guests, Mr. Thornwell, I'll need to focus entirely on their needs. That's what you want, isn't it? Attention to detail? She threw his own words from last night back at him, and saw the moment he recognized them. His jaw tightened. Fine. Do whatever you think is best. Just make sure nothing goes wrong. Elena turned back to the table and switched to Mandarin. Shall we begin with tea? I can recommend several varieties that pair well with the evening's menu. For the next 3 hours, Elena worked harder than she'd ever worked in her life. She moved between languages like breathing, Mandarin with the Zhang family, English with Marcus and his associates, Spanish once when checking with Miguel in the kitchen about substituting ingredients. She explained each dish as it arrived, translating not just words but cultural context. When the Peking duck came out, she described its history dating to the imperial era, the meaning of the ceremony of carving it tableside. Chun Bao watched her throughout with those sharp, assessing eyes. During the third course, a delicate soup made with lotus root and pork, the grandmother spoke quietly. You studied international relations at university. Elena paused in the act of refilling tea. How did you know? The way you translate. You don't just convert words, you build understanding. That's diplomat skill. Chun Bao sipped her soup, nodded approval. Why are you here, serving tables? It was a question Elena had asked herself 1,000 times at 3 a.m., unable to sleep, drowning in student debt. Life took a different direction than I planned. Grandmother. Directions change. But talent? Talent finds its way through. At the other end of the table, the business discussion was progressing. Zhang Wei was explaining his concerns about the software interface. He wanted something intuitive enough for workers who weren't tech-savvy to use. Marcus was making promises, throwing around jargon, and Elena watched Zhang Wei's expression grow progressively more distant. Finally, Zhang Wei held up a hand and spoke in Mandarin. Granddaughter, please explain to Mr. Thornwell that I don't need technical specifications. I need to understand if his system will help my workers do their jobs better or just make my managers feel more important. Elena translated, and Marcus blinked. His workers? I thought we were discussing management-level implementation. Mr. Zhang's business philosophy centers on worker efficiency and satisfaction, Elena explained. He believes that the workers on the warehouse floors and ships are the heart of his business. Any system that doesn't help them specifically isn't worth implementing. Marcus looked like he'd been slapped. But the ROI projections we prepared were all based on management-level data and, perhaps, Elena said carefully, you could explain how your system would specifically help a warehouse worker in Guangzhou do their job more efficiently? In concrete terms. She was stepping far outside her role as server now, actively shaping the negotiation. Marcus shot her a look that might have been gratitude or might have been fury, hard to tell which. But he pivoted, starting to explain use cases Elena could translate in ways that resonated with Zhang Wei's values. Mei Zhang leaned toward Elena during a lull in the conversation. You're very good at this. Have you considered working in business consulting? I've considered a lot of things, Elena said honestly. Most of them cost more than I can afford. Interesting answer. Most people would have said yes immediately, trying to impress. Mei studied her. You're not trying to impress us, are you? You're just being yourself. I learned a long time ago that pretending to be someone else is exhausting, Miss Zhang, and usually fails anyway. Mei smiled. Call me Mei. And you should know, my grandmother never changes her mind about people. She decided within 5 minutes of meeting Mr. Thornwell that she didn't trust him. Too smooth, she said. Too rehearsed. But you? She told me in Mandarin when you went to the kitchen that you have a honest heart that speaks through your words. That's the highest compliment she gives. Elena felt something warm bloom in her chest. Pride, maybe, or the unfamiliar sensation of being seen for who she actually was rather than dismissed for who she wasn't. The dinner progressed through 7 courses. Elena facilitated conversations, translated jokes that made Chun Bao laugh, and watched as Zhang Wei slowly warmed to Marcus. Not because of the expensive food or the elegant setting, but because Elena kept steering the conversation back to shared values and practical applications. During the 5th course, sea bass steamed in ginger and scallions, disaster nearly struck. Marcus, trying to demonstrate cultural knowledge, attempted to toast Zhang Wei using what he clearly thought was an appropriate Chinese phrase. But his tones were completely wrong, and instead of saying, "to our partnership," he'd essentially said, "to our toilets." Chun Bao's eyes widened. Mei choked on her tea. Zhang Wei's expression froze in polite confusion. Elena jumped in immediately, speaking in Mandarin with a laugh. "Mr. Thornwell is learning Chinese and has just demonstrated that tones are tricky. He meant to toast your partnership but accidentally made a bathroom joke. In Mexico, we say that humor shared is friendship started. So perhaps this is a good sign." Chun Bao burst into genuine laughter. Not polite tittering but a full, delighted sound. Tell him his Chinese needs work, but his heart is trying. That counts for something. Elena translated a gentler version, and Marcus had the grace to look embarrassed. "I apologize. I clearly should have stuck with English." No, Zhang Wei said, his English halting but sincere. "Is good you try. Show respect, even if," he smiled, "even if say wrong thing." The tension broke, and suddenly the table felt less like a high-stakes negotiation and more like people actually enjoying each other's company. Elena watched it happen, the small miracle of human connection she'd somehow facilitated, and felt a strange sense of power. Not over anyone, but with them. This was what her grandmother had meant about bridges. This was what her studies in international relations had been pointing toward. This was the person she could have become if life hadn't taken those turns. By the time dessert arrived, mango pudding with fresh fruit, presented with a jade-colored coulis Miguel had spent an hour perfecting. Zhang Wei and Marcus were discussing timeline details for the contract. Not agreed yet, but moving in that direction. Chun Bao beckoned Elena closer as she cleared plates. In Mandarin, she said, "Sit. For a moment. Grandmother, I'm working. Sit." It wasn't a request. Elena sat in the chair Jessica had abandoned hours ago, suddenly aware of every eye at the table on her. Chun Bao pulled out a business card, thick, cream-colored paper with characters embossed in gold, and placed it in front of Elena. "My granddaughter runs our international acquisitions division," Chun Bao said. "She needs someone who understands both business and culture. Someone who can build bridges, not just translate words. Someone who knows what it means to work hard and stay humble." She tapped the card. "You call her next week. You come to interview. We see if you are as smart in office as you are with teapot." Elena stared at the card, her mind refusing to process what was happening. "Grandmother, I'm not qualified. I don't have my degree finished, and You think degree is what matters? I never went to university. My son never went to university. We learned by doing, by working, by being honest when we made mistakes." Chun Bao's expression softened. "You think I don't see? You work this job because you must, not because you choose. But you do it with excellence anyway. That tells me about your character. Character is what I want in people who work with my family." Mei added, in English so everyone could understand, "We're opening a new U.S. office in Seattle next year. West Coast Operations Center. We need someone to help navigate cultural differences, facilitate communications, help us understand American business partners who want to work with us. The position pays $85,000 to start, with benefits and opportunities for advancement. If you're interested, call me." Elena's hands were shaking. $85,000. More than double what she made at the Sterling Oak working double shifts. Benefits. Advancement. Career, not just a job. "I don't know what to say," Say you'll call, May said simply. Or don't say anything now. Think about it. Talk to your family. Then decide. She smiled. But I hope you'll call. I've been looking for someone like you for 6 months. Turns out you were serving us tea the whole time. Marcus had been watching this exchange with an expression Elena couldn't quite read. When Chun Bao finished, he cleared his throat. Well, that's wonderful. Elena, congratulations. His tone was stiff, forced. Though I hope you'll give us proper notice if you do decide to leave. We'd hate to lose such a capable server on short notice. The words were professional, but Elena heard the edge underneath. She'd embarrassed him tonight. Saved his deal, yes, but also shown up his careful planning. His assumptions about who was valuable and who was invisible. Men like Marcus Thornwell didn't forget that kind of lesson. Of course, Mr. Thornwell, she said evenly. I'm always professional. The dinner wound down. Elena brought the check, presented in a leather portfolio that cost more than her monthly groceries, and Marcus barely glanced at it before handing over a platinum credit card. When Elena returned with the receipt, he signed it without looking at her. No thank you. No acknowledgement of the fact that she'd single-handedly saved the most important business dinner of his career. But the Zhang family more than made up for it. Zhang Wei shook her hand formally and said in careful English, You have gift, Miss Elena. Gift for bringing people together. Don't waste it. May hugged her. A brief, warm embrace that felt like being welcomed into something she'd never thought she'd access. Call me Monday. We'll have coffee and discuss details. And Chun Bao, last to leave, pressed something into Elena's hand as she passed. When Elena looked down, she saw a small jade pendant carved in the shape of a plum blossom. In Chinese culture, the grandmother said, plum blossoms bloom in winter, when everything else has died. They represent resilience, perseverance. They remind us that beauty and strength grow in harshest conditions. She patted Elena's hand. You are plum blossom, Elena Vasquez. Don't forget this. Then they were gone, sweeping out of the sterling oak in a rustle of silk and carefully maintained dignity, leaving Elena standing by table 7 with a jade pendant in her palm and a future she hadn't dared imagine sitting on a business card in her pocket. The restaurant continued around her. Other diners finishing meals, servers clearing tables, the normal rhythm of a Friday night. But Elena felt like she was standing in the eye of a hurricane, that moment of perfect stillness before everything changes. Elena! Gerald appeared at her elbow, his expression complicated. That was impressive, very impressive. Mr. Thornwell wants to speak with you before he leaves. He's settling his bill at the bar. She found Marcus at the bar, nursing what looked like scotch, his shoulders rigid with tension. When she approached, he didn't look at her immediately, just stared into his glass like it held answers. You speak Mandarin, he said finally. Fluently. You studied international relations. You clearly understand high-level business negotiation. He turned to face her now, his expression a mixture of anger and something that might have been shame. Why didn't you mention any of this last night when I was... He stopped, couldn't quite finish the sentence. When you were mocking me for lacking ambition? Elena said quietly. When you dismissed me as invisible. When you specifically requested I not serve your table because I didn't fit your image of refinement. She shook her head. Would it have mattered if I'd told you? Would you have believed me? Marcus was silent. You see what you expect to see, Mr. Thornwell. You looked at me and saw a waitress. Someone without value beyond bringing you water without ice. It never occurred to you that I might be capable of more because people like me in positions like mine aren't supposed to be capable of more in your worldview. That's not fair, isn't it? Elena's voice remained calm, but there was steel underneath now. The steel of someone who'd been underestimated her entire life and was finally done with it. You made assumptions based on nothing but the uniform I was wearing and probably the color of my skin. You never asked about my qualifications, my education, my skills. You just decided I was less than and treated me accordingly. Marcus faltered, and for the first time since she'd met him, he looked genuinely uncertain. Tonight could have been a complete disaster. Zhang Wei was ready to walk out. That contract represents years of work, hundreds of jobs, the entire future direction of my company. And you saved it. You! He laughed, the sound hollow. Some waitress I tried to have replaced because she didn't look the part I'd written in my head. I'm not some waitress. I'm Elena Vasquez. I have a name, a history, skills you never bothered to ask about. And I'm not looking for your gratitude, Mr. Thornwell. I didn't do this for you. I did it because the Zhang family deserved respect, and because I could help provide that. She turned to walk away, but Marcus's voice stopped her. What did they offer you? Chun Bao and her granddaughter. Elena debated not answering, but she was done being silent, done making herself small. A job. International liaison for their new Seattle office. $85,000 a year to start. Marcus whistled low. That's a significant opportunity. Yes, it is. Are you going to take it? Elena met his eyes directly. I haven't decided yet, but I'll tell you this, whether I take it or not, I won't be working at the Sterling Oak much longer. I've spent 3 years being invisible here, making myself small so people like you could feel big. I'm done with that. She paused. You were right about one thing last night, Mr. Thornwell. I did lack ambition. Not in the way you meant. Not because I'm lazy or content to be invisible, but because I'd started to believe that this was all I deserved. That my dreams were too big for someone in my position. Tonight reminded me that I was wrong. She walked away before he could respond, her heart pounding but her steps steady. Behind her, she heard Gerald calling her name, but she kept walking through the dining room, past her abandoned section, into the staff area where Miguel was cleaning down his station. He took one look at her face and grinned. So, how'd it go? Miguel, I need to tell you something, and I need you not to freak out. Never a good start to a conversation. I might have just gotten offered a job that pays more than double what I make here. Miguel put down the pan he was scrubbing. Are you serious? Dead serious. She pulled out May's business card and showed him, the characters and English text swimming slightly through the tears she was surprised to find in her eyes. The daughter of the investor Thornwell was trying to impress. She wants me to work for their company. International liaison. Real benefits, real salary, actual respect. Elena. Miguel pulled her into a hug that smelled like garlic and dish soap and 3 years of friendship. That's amazing. That's incredible. Holy shit, you're going to say yes, right? I don't know. Maybe. It's overwhelming. This morning I was worried about making rent. And now you're worried about something completely different. Miguel finished. That's called growth, mi amiga. That's called finally getting what you deserve. Do I deserve it though? I didn't even finish my degree. What if I'm not actually qualified? What if they're just being nice because I helped them tonight? Stop. Miguel held her at arm's length, his expression serious. You speak 3 languages fluently. You studied international relations at one of the best universities on the West Coast. You've been navigating cultural differences and managing difficult people with grace for years. You just did it in a restaurant instead of an office. You are absolutely qualified. The question isn't whether you deserve this opportunity. The question is whether you're brave enough to stop being invisible. Elena thought about Chun Bao's words. Plum blossoms bloom in winter. Thought about her grandmother's voice teaching her Mandarin in that tiny kitchen all those years ago. Thought about every time she'd made herself smaller so someone else could feel larger. Every time she'd swallowed an insult and smiled through disrespect. I'm brave enough, she said, and believed it. Elena didn't sleep that night. She sat in her tiny apartment with her laptop open, researching everything she could find about Zhang Wei's company, officially called Chunzhong Global Logistics, after the family's dual heritage. The company had started 30 years ago with a single shipping route between Shanghai and Hong Kong. Now they controlled networks across Southeast Asia, with warehouses in 15 countries and a fleet of cargo ships that moved everything from electronics to textiles to automotive parts. But what interested Elena most was the company's philosophy, repeated in interview after interview with Zhang Wei. We succeed when our workers succeed. Technology serves people, not replaces them. It was so different from the corporate speak she'd read in articles about Thornwell Industries. where everything was about optimization, efficiency, maximizing shareholder value. At 3 a.m., she finally closed her laptop and picked up her phone, scrolled through her contacts until she found her mother's number. Too late to call, but she typed out a text. "Mom, something happened tonight. Something big. Can we talk tomorrow?" The response came faster than expected. "I'm awake. Call me." Her mother answered on the first ring. "Mija, what's wrong? Are you okay?" "I'm fine, Mama. Better than fine, actually." Elena curled up on her second-hand couch, pulling a blanket around herself. "I think my life might be about to change." This is a powerful story about Elena Vasquez, a brilliant woman who spent 5 years making herself invisible while working as a waitress at the Sterling Oak, an upscale Seattle restaurant that catered to the city's elite. It's a tale of cultural bridges, hidden talents, and the transformative moment when someone finally sees you for who you truly are. Elena wasn't supposed to be a career waitress. She had studied international relations at the University of Washington, spent a transformative year in Beijing learning Mandarin and Tang Dynasty poetry from her grandmother's kitchen lessons, and walked the Great Wall feeling like she'd found a piece of herself. But life had other plans. When her mother fell ill, Elena dropped out to help with medical bills and support her younger brother Daniel through school. 3 years later, she was still serving tables, her degrees unfinished, her languages unused, her dreams carefully packed away. The Sterling Oak seemed glamorous from the outside. White tablecloths, crystal chandeliers, clientele who dropped thousands on wine without blinking. But for Elena, it was a masterclass in erasure. Despite her perfect service record, she was consistently passed over for the lucrative tables where real money was made. Those went to servers like Jessica, blonde, connected, from the right families. Elena got the leftovers, the difficult customers, the tables nobody else wanted. She had learned to make herself small, to smile through casual racism, to accept that in this world of old money and older prejudices, a Latina woman with student loans and a second-hand uniform would never be seen as refined enough for the premium clientele. Then came Marcus Thornwell, CEO of Thornwell Industries, a man who embodied every assumption Elena had learned to navigate. When he arrived for a critical business dinner with the Zhang family, Chinese shipping magnates worth billions, he took one look at Elena and dismissed her. She wasn't polished enough, refined enough, white enough to serve his most important clients. He demanded Jessica instead. What Marcus didn't know was that the Zhang family spoke Mandarin. What he couldn't see was that Elena was fluent. Not just in the language but in the cultural nuances, the business etiquette, the subtle art of building relationships that Chinese business culture values above all else. The dinner was a disaster from the start. Jessica, for all her pedigree and perfect manners, couldn't connect with the Zhang family. Cultural misunderstandings multiplied. Marcus's aggressive American negotiation style offended Zhang Wei, the family patriarch. His mother, Chun Bao, sat silent and observing, her jade pendant catching the light as she watched the evening unravel. Then Chun Bao spoke in Mandarin, asking for tea. Jessica stood frozen, not understanding. Marcus looked panicked, and Elena, watching from across the room, made a choice. She stepped forward and responded in flawless Mandarin, her pronunciation Beijing perfect, her tone respectful and warm. The room transformed. Chun Bao's face lit up with delight and surprise. What followed was an evening of genuine connection. Elena translating not just words but cultural contexts, explaining American directness to the Zhangs while helping Marcus understand the relationship-based approach Chinese business required. She quoted Tang Dynasty poetry. She navigated complex negotiations with grace. She built bridges where there had only been walls. By the end of the night, the impossible had happened. The deal was saved. But more importantly, Chun Bao saw Elena, truly saw her. She recognized not just linguistic skill but character, intelligence, resilience. Before leaving, Chun Bao pressed a jade pendant into Elena's hand and invited her to call Mei Zhang, her granddaughter and the company's North American director, about a job opportunity. Elena stood in the restaurant, holding that jade pendant, feeling the weight of 5 years of invisibility finally lifting. Chun Bao had gifted her more than jewelry. She'd given her validation, recognition, hope. The weekend that followed was transformative. Elena called her mother, who reminded her that she'd been dying inside a little more every day at the Sterling Oak, making herself invisible so others could shine. Her mother's words were gentle but devastating. When are you going to give yourself permission to want more? On Monday, Elena called Mei Zhang. The conversation revealed an opportunity that seemed almost too good to be true. A position as Cultural Liaison and Communications Coordinator for Changjiang Global Logistics' new Seattle office. The role would pay $85,000 base salary, nearly double her waitress income, include full benefits, offer tuition reimbursement to finish her degree, and most importantly, value her exactly as she was. During her interview, May asked the most honest question anyone had posed in years. Could Elena promise to show up as her full self, not the diminished version she'd needed to be as a waitress? Elena couldn't promise it would be easy, but she promised to try. The offer came with something extra, a $5,000 signing bonus from Chen Bao, who'd insisted Elena shouldn't worry about stupid things while she learns important things. It was the kind of practical generosity that recognized Elena's reality without condescension. Elena gave her notice at the Sterling Oak, setting her last day for December 31st. The reactions were mixed. Her friend Miguel celebrated. Her manager Gerald tried to understand. But some colleagues, like Sarah, accused her of thinking she was better than everyone now. Elena's response was telling. The difference is, I got offered something better and I'm taking it. That doesn't make me better than you, Sarah. It just makes me done accepting less than I'm worth. Then Marcus Thornwell returned, having heard about her departure. In a moment of recognition that came 5 years too late, he offered her a position at Thornwell Industries, $95,000 stock options, direct reporting to him. It was $10,000 more than the Zhang offer. But Elena understood something crucial. Marcus was offering her the job because she'd proven useful, not because he'd recognized her inherent worth. The Zhangs had valued her before her skills became convenient. That difference mattered. She turned him down. I deserve to work somewhere I'm valued for who I am, not what I can do for someone else's bottom line. On January 2nd, Elena walked into her new office at Changjiang Global Logistics wearing a badge that read Cultural Liaison and Communications Coordinator, and Chun Bao's jade pendant around her neck. The work was challenging. Navigating cultural misunderstandings, translating intentions rather than just words, building bridges between different business practices. But it was work that mattered, where her voice was heard and her full self was welcomed. 3 months later, Marcus sent an email congratulating her on her success, admitting his blindness and hoping she was thriving. Elena read it twice and deleted it. She had no room left for people who only recognized her worth in retrospect. She had plum blossoms to grow, a reference to Chun Bao's gift and its symbolic message. Plum blossoms bloom in winter, in the harshest conditions, showing strength precisely when it seems impossible. Elena had been in winter for 5 years. Now finally she was blooming. This story is about more than one woman's career change. It's about the countless talented people rendered invisible by systems that value appearance over ability, connections over competence, pedigree over potential. It's about the cost of survival mode, how making yourself small to get through the day slowly erodes who you are. It's about the transformative power of being truly seen by someone who recognizes your worth without needing proof first. Elena's grandmother had always told her that language was a door. Chun Bao finally invited her to walk through it. The difference between Marcus's belated offer and the Zhang's original invitation reveals everything about recognition versus exploitation, about valuing people versus using them. Most powerfully, this story reminds us that sometimes the most radical act is refusing to accept less than you deserve, walking away from opportunities that don't honor your full humanity, even when they offer more money or prestige. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt invisible, underestimated, or been told to be grateful for less than your worth, please subscribe to our channel. We're committed to sharing stories about courage, cultural bridges, and the extraordinary lives of ordinary people who refuse to stay invisible.